You're listening to Be Informed with Your NP, a weekly podcast with your host, nurse practitioner Tamara Lewis, a former nursing instructor with a strong background in critical care who enjoys educating the public, upcoming nursing students, family, and friends on the benefits of becoming an advocate for themselves as well as others. This show is designed to put the ease into easy understanding of medical conditions and other hot topics discussed with special guests and coworkers. So if you're looking to increase your medical knowledge, it's time to be informed with your NP. Here's Tamara.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are listening. Thank you for joining me, podcast number 4. Today we're discussing hospice and the team members who assist patients experience quality end-of-life care. Today I have Kim Cox, who is a hospice nurse with Compassionate Care Hospice that's located in the state of Delaware. Kim has been a nurse since 2015 with experience in pediatrics and emergency. She also traveled pre-COVID to Texas and other states, and then decided her heart is with hospice, where she's currently providing compassionate care to not only her patients, but family members as well. So thank you, Kim, for joining us today.
You're so welcome.
I've experienced hospice a couple times with a couple family members and thought that's where I had wanted to go earlier on in my career and decided that that wasn't for me. So it takes a special kind of person to be able to work in the different areas that people work in. And I've worked with you for many years. And I know that you are an excellent provider to not only your patients, but their family members as well.
Thank you.
So I just have a few set of questions that I wanted to ask you just to provide education for our listeners, for either nurses who may want to consider going into hospice, or for our listeners who have family members that maybe are on their way to hospice or that are in hospice, and what they can expect. So after working in the ER for so many years and then traveling, what made you change your career choice?
Well, the ER gave me such a variety of experiences. My knowledge and skill set grew, but my heart was always with hospice. My mom was in hospice when I was in my 20s, and I was just so inspired by everybody that interacted with her and with us. They looked at her not as a cancer patient, but as a person who just happened to have cancer. And they wanted her to be as comfortable and as fulfilled as possible with whatever time she had left. So it was just such a motivating factor that I just fell in love with it.
Okay, thank you. What is your role on the hospice care team?
I work overnights on call. So anytime that the office is not open, if there's been any changes in the patient's condition after hours, the family can call us. We are readily available anywhere in Kent and Sussex counties. So anytime there's a change in the condition or just a concern that the patient or the family has that can't wait until morning, they call us and we respond to it.
Okay. That's comforting to know that someone is available around the clock. Maybe some people may not know that.
Yes.
At one point, when does someone become eligible to be a hospice patient?
So when someone has been given a life-limited prognosis, if that disease follows its normal progression and the life expectancy is approximately 6 months or less, the patient or the family, if the patient is incapacitated, if they've chosen to forego curative treatments, we will go and assess. They have to have declining functional status. They have to have an alteration in nutrition, so like a 10% loss of body weight in the last 6 months. They have to have observable and documented deterioration in overall clinical condition in the last 6 months. So we look at how many times they've been to the ER, if there's been admissions, if there's been a decrease in physical abilities or cognitive abilities, and then Also, if there's comorbidities, we present all this to our medical director who decides if then they're eligible.
Okay. Thank you for that information. And so just to backtrack on that question a little bit, when you talk about comorbidities, what exactly are you referring to?
So, does the patient have underlying heart disease? Do they have diabetes? We look at their labs. We look at any x-ray or any other kind of studies they may have had. So we look at the entire picture of the patient's health, not just one particular disease progress.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, what is your experience with providing end of life care to patients and their families?
Well, sometimes in the admission, because we also do admissions on night shift, or early in the visits, you can definitely see the 5 stages of grief. A lot of times there's denial at the very beginning. Some family members will ask us not to say the word hospice, but of course we have to be truthful and transparent in our education, and certainly if they're signing admission paperwork. So we always encourage the patients and the family to share their expectations, understanding, and fears regarding the end of life. People want to know that you care and you understand their feelings. Those visits are really the building block of the relationship. Hospice is such a sacred and intimate time of life. We do become part of their family. It's actually so beautiful to watch. And of course, as time goes on, the team, whether it's the nurses, social work, chaplains, the home health aides, they all interact with the patient and the family, and they get to see how much we truly care.
Yes, I can appreciate that. Unfortunately, I did not get to build a relationship with my mom's hospice nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was coherent. She was able to sign her own paperwork.
Okay.
But as soon as we started hospice on Wednesday and the morphine drip got started, within 24 to 36 hours, she had passed. So we unfortunately did not get to build that relationship. However, that hospice agency still made themselves available for us for after the fact. You know, they sent letters, they made themselves available.
Yes, and sometimes that's what we do. We have some patients that are in the hospital that they know are going to pass. We go in and put them on our service, even though we're not directly taking care of the patient. We're there more for the family and to be able to follow them in the year to follow and make sure the bereavement needs are taken care of.
Yes, I can definitely appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had a family member that disagreed with the care plan or the care that was being provided to their loved one?
We have had sometimes when there are too many people involved in the care of the loved one. Sometimes people have differing opinions. So it's a lot of consistent education on our behalf of why we suggest things. Again, we can't dictate anything. The medication protocol we're putting them on, those are prescribed. But ultimately, when we leave the home, the family is in the driver's seat. But the interesting thing is, the one thing I see most people struggle with is just the simple bowel protocol. We talk a lot about poop in hospice.
Right.
And
we talk about a lot about poop in general.
We have this thing about poop, but something as simple as stool softeners, we put them on that day one. And sometimes the families are so focused on, let's say, the person's pain level. They're good about giving the pain medicine. They forget about the reason for the stool softener. And of course, these people are not drinking enough water. They're not getting their high fiber diet. They're not moving. So they're going to be constipated anyhow, and then you throw opiates on top, and you know what happens then.
Right.
So it's, again, a lot of education, a lot of reinforcing that the whys that we do. So it's just a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely a lot of education.
But again, when you remind them how much we care and why we're doing it for their loved one, they sooner or later they kind of go, oh yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, that light bulb goes off, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I talked about pain and assessment in a previous podcast. How do you assess for pain and other symptoms in your hospice patients?
Well, certainly when the patient is able, the numerical scale is always the best, the 0 to 10. And most of the time, they can do that right up towards the end. Now, when they get to a person or a place that they can't, or say that the person has dementia, we use what's called a pain ad scale. It's very similar to a flack scale. So we use it and we're looking at things like breathing, negative vocalization, whether it's moans or crying out, facial expression, grimacing, things like that, and body language and consolability. So we'll use those when they're nonverbal or when they're closer to the end of life.
Okay. And so now, since you mentioned closer to the end of life, how do you handle the loss of a patient?
Well, I'll tell you, the thing I've known since early childhood, because my dad died when he was just 41. I was 3. I know that death can happen at any age or any situation. So I do what I'm trained to do, and I do it with as much compassion and empathy as possible. I pray for guidance and wisdom on my way to the person, and then I pray for peace and comfort when I'm leaving them. I live so that I have no regrets. No, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have done that. Everyone has a time to die, and I know that. Right. I can't give them one more second, but what I can do is make it the best and make them as comfortable as I can.
Wow, that's pretty deep. And that's why you do what you do.
Absolutely. I love it.
All right. So now I'm about to cry. How do you handle?
That's what we do too. We'll just all cry.
I know, right? How do you handle the emotional challenges of hospice care?
You know what? Again, prayer is the only thing that holds me together. I also try to prepare the family with an honest evaluation of the decline. So you prepare the family. I encourage them to say their goodbyes. And I tell them I would rather them say goodbye 10 times than not at all. Mm-hmm. Never have any regrets is my biggest thing.
Okay. How do you keep up with your education piece? Are there seminars? Are there conferences? I know that we have seminars and conferences for the ER and the med surg and different things, but I really don't see a lot of hospice seminars or conferences. So how do you keep up with that piece?
The same kind of thing. We have CEUs that we maintain every 3 months. We have continuing ed that we have to do, webinars, podcasts. There's a couple of great hospice nurses that do podcasts. I keep up with that. And of course, with being night shift, it's hard to make things in the daytime. So I try to listen to as many things as I can that's been recorded.
Okay. All right. So we are about to end our podcast in a couple minutes, but if there's one thing that you would like the audience to take with them tonight, what would it be?
Well, as nurses, I say advocate for your patient. Comfort and dignity are essential. Have honest, compassionate discussions about death and dying. Support and education the family as much as possible. And to everyone listening, have open and honest discussions about what's important to you, what makes your life worth living. Have those talks with your loved ones so they know, and they don't have to guess what you want. Put it down in writing so there's no fighting or harsh feelings amongst your family. And most of all, remember to spend time with those you love, because time is precious.
It is. Thank you. So you talked about the stages of grieving, and you talked about putting everything down in writing, like advanced directives and living wills. So those are going to be podcasts that I'm going to be talking about in the near future. But I wanted to thank you for providing that information. It was definitely 1000% heartfelt. Disclaimer: this podcast is to provide education and not medical advice. Please consult your physician as they know your medical conditions, medications, etc. I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks as we talk about GERD, gastroesophageal reflux. What is that burn?
You've been listening to Be Informed with your NP. We appreciate you tuning in. If you have any questions, please email Tamara at beinformednp@gmail.com or comment in the chat section of the podcast. Be sure to follow on Instagram and YouTube so you can stay up to date on the weekly topics. Remember, it's best to be informed. See you next week.